Hi, I'm Jalen Rose, and welcome to the Renaissance Man podcast, proudly presented by the New York Post, a show where we cover trends in fashion, entertainment, current events, and everything in between. Our next guest is a comedic force. She's overcome violence, homelessness to become one of the biggest breakouts in the comedic game. Her new hour stand-up special in Puerto Rico, Dominican Republican travel documentary Fighting Words is on HBO Max. And guess what? She filmed the stand-up portion in the middle of Hurricane Henry. Do not play with this woman. It is my honor to welcome Aida Rodriguez to the podcast.
Thank you. Hey, I need you to write that down so I can give that to the hosts at my comedy shows so they can learn what a proper introduction is. I thank you. I appreciate that.
I appreciate the love. Thank you for joining me. So you were born in Massachusetts, but I read, and everyone, I'm not getting all up in her business, but like your story is like in doing a lot of background. It's really like something that so many people can learn a lot from. So when I ask you about the fact that you were kidnapped twice by your parents and moved back and forth between the Dominican Republic and the United States, how did all that turmoil at such a young age shape your worldview?
You know, the one thing that we got to normalize is talking about our trauma as people of color, because people laugh at it and they think, oh man, I brushed it off. But a lot of times we don't brush it off. We take it with us. People think it's cool when I tell them that I was kidnapped by family members. Like, that's not traumatic. They're like, oh, you got kidnapped by family members. I'm like, I got taken from my father, who I didn't see until June of this year. And then my grandmother took me from my mother. And my mother was on the run with a man who was wanted by the FBI for murder.
Wow.
So there was a lot of trauma from that. And when my grandmother came and got me, she cut all my hair off because she wanted to hide me when she flew me across state lines. And I was mad at my grandmother because even though my grandmother was doing what she thought was best for me, I wanted to be with my mother. I wanted to be on the run.
Right.
I wanted to be Malcolm with the gun out the window.
Right.
So it was traumatic. And it shows up still to this day. I'm still a work in progress.
I am as well. I'm from the northwest side of Detroit, and as you mentioned, us embracing our pain as Black and brown people is really important. And so tell more about, like, what was it like for you, your early years dealing with all of that? Like, were you going to school? Like, what did like how did all of that play out?
So when my grandmother took me, she put me in school in Miami. And Miami is the city that raised me. Though I have roots in New York and I love New York, but I would be a liar if I didn't say I didn't grow up in Miami. I grew up in the inner city of Miami. I grew up in that place where you hear Rick Ross rap about. I grew up on 22nd Avenue. I grew up my mom still lives in Liberty City. And I was messed up when I was a kid. I was really nervous. They call it anxiety now. They used to just say scary back then.
Yes, indeed. Scary or weird.
Yeah. And I had a lot of anxiety. I didn't trust people. I had a joke about it in my last special about when my grandmother would be like, hey, you want to go to McDonald's with me? And I'd be like, nah, I'm messing around with you. I'll end up in Milwaukee. Like, I can't trust you, lady. But it shakes the foundation. And the foundation is where the trust comes, where empathy comes, where self-esteem comes. And all of those things were rocked. And it was tough. I grew up in a place where there were no white people. I grew up in a place where it was all Black and brown. I went to Jackson High School, which was predominantly Black and brown. And when I went away to school, it was culture shock because I was like, I heard white people talking to us crazy. And I was like, you get beat up where I'm from. White people don't talk out of turn where I'm from. Like, And it was just it was a culture shock. And it was interesting to, go back and revisit some of these things through like therapy, because I really learned so much about myself. Like I was just surviving, and we survive so much. We think that's what life is. Every day we make it, that's just what it is. What are we supposed to do, And it was very interesting to see a lot of the trauma that I had, how I just blocked it out and kept going.
So Rick Ross, Rose, I got love for him. Trick Daddy, Trina, so many great artists, the OG Uncle Luke, so many people from Miami, 2 Live Crew. I'm a huge fan. Mm-hmm. And they paint a picture of what Miami and Liberty City is like. Mm-hmm. But what was it like looking from your window?
So ironically, I love Trick. Uncle Luke is my Uncle Luke. He was, I actually interned for him. He was the one that taught me how to go get my money. He taught me a lot of business stuff. I learned so much from him. And when I tell people that I worked with Luke, they would be like, "Were you a dancer?" And I was like, "No, I was not a dancer." He would say, he would say to me, "Don't ever perform until you get your money first." Like he just taught me so much stuff. I got money with Luke. I learned a lot of things from Luke. They depict Miami the way that Miami is. A great disservice was done to Miami when you would see people market Miami as South Beach, which is just this little strip where there were a bunch of Russian gay people and models, and then there's this whole city of people who are hardworking people, working class Black and brown people that have built that city from the ground up, that talk like Trick, and you don't understand because we got our own language. And
you don't know that.
You don't know that. So when they cuss you out, it's a whole different language. And where my mother lives down the street from one of the biggest crime areas in Miami. And the hood don't ever leave. Like we don't snitch where we from. But where my mom, it's a lot of stuff that happens, a lot of activity. And people think of Miami and they think of Miami Vice, they think Flamingos, and it's a rough place, it's a tough place.
So I've heard a lot of comedians talk about embracing and using their comedy as therapy and projecting that to the audience. At what point in your life did you realize you were funny?
So I believe that I realized that I was funny for comedy when I moved to Los Angeles. I left Miami and I moved to LA. And it was somebody else who had to tell me that. Chris Spencer was like, "Yo, you's a stand-up comedian." He was like, "I don't know if you know this." He said, "But I always know him when I see him." But I gravitated towards comedy at a very young age. My family is Afro-Latina. My family my uncles are Black. They're Puerto Rican, but they are Black people who speak Spanish, but Black nonetheless. And my uncles were very immersed in hip hop, comedy. So my Uncle Davey, who's my youngest uncle, he gave me Run DMC. He gave me Muhammad Ali. He gave me Bruce Lee. He gave me, all of that, but he gave me Richard Pryor. Ooh. And I wasn't supposed to be listening to that when I was little, and he used to sneak me with him. And
album that sounds like the album years on the Component set.
Yeah, you are
33. Ooh, that's classic.
Yeah, and I heard Richard Pryor doing this bit about getting high with his dog, and I was little laughing, and I was like, "Man, I want to do that." That was it. I was hooked.
Do you remember your first open mic, and how did you feel before and after?
So my first open mic, I do remember, that was at the Westwood Brewing Company, a place that Chris sent me. And, it was deflating because I went up there thinking I was about to rock that piece. And everybody and the worst thing about open mics is that the majority of the people that are there are other comedians. So either half of them haters, so they're not about your stuff.
Yes.
And the other half are they're not paying attention. So when you can make a comedian laugh, that's a really big deal. Like I just got a text from Little Rel, and that like trumped like all the text messages that I got from other people, because he was like, yo, you funny. And I was like, yeah. But that open mic was humbling, because the first time I got on stage, I crushed it because it was all adrenaline and energy and everything that I had in my whole life all into one moment. But then the moment after that, as y'all say, bruh, I took a major L, and it was so humbling and it was so funny, because that's the moment when I said, hey, I want to do this. I want to figure this thing out.
Well, it just seems like great people travel in packs, because I got love for Chris Spencer, Uncle Luke. I've had Said the Entertainer on the show, and Lil Rel has been on the show. And so I must ask you, because you talked about it not going so well. What is it like to bomb on stage, and how did you reconcile that feeling to ever be able to go back on again?
You know, you learn to bomb just like you learn to miss shots. You know what I mean? And you just, if you really in it, you're going to figure it out. You're not going to just stay missing shots, right?
Correct.
Because then what are we doing here? The thing is, I've had some big losses. Like I've bombed on some big things, and I realized that it was nerves. Like I did this thing called One Mic Stand with Kevin Hart, and big ups to Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart is like one of the first people to like take me to Montreal, and the first show I ever did that was like a TV set, and I bombed so bad that I made a t-shirt off of that bomb. I made so much money off of this t-shirt, if I'm honest. Because when I got off stage, this woman, I could just hear this woman, like, first of all, I was all wrong. I had on Versace. Like my manager was like, I want her to look like a Barbie doll. That was a bad move. I got on stage, I walked down, and the woman was like, who does this bitch think she is? And I have a shirt that says that. I made so much money off of it.
That's hilarious.
It was my Naeem Lynn and Sydney Castillo, two of my comedy homies, had to come scrape me off the ground. When I got off stage, I walked off the steps. They were waiting for me, like, come on. Like I went to another club that same night and got that off of me. And then I did this movie with Robert DeNiro, because Robert DeNiro saw me perform and was like, I want her in my movie. And he put me on a show in New York. I was at the Cellar. I was new. It was freezing. The people had been in line for 2 hours. He was supposed to be on the show. Then he decided not to be on the show. They get me. They was not feeling me. It was so bad that there was a woman of color in the audience, and I was bombing so bad. I was like, I can't believe you turned on me too.
Come on, sister. Seriously, right now? Of all people? You know what I mean? I can't rely on you in this moment.
She looked at me like, I don't know. Like, it was so funny. Like, it was hilarious. And then I had to get on a plane that night, go to San Antonio, and do one of the most unattended comedy clubs in the nation. And that weekend, I was like, I think I'm gonna quit this. I don't know if I'm gonna do this anymore. And then I had one good set that weekend with a very small audience. And then I remembered why I was doing this. And then I was like, all right, let me get myself together, stop being a punk.
So I definitely need a Robert De Niro story.
So, it's funny. We at the Comedy Cellar, I'm new there. And there's this show where everybody is bombing, right? It's like Anchorman when they open that. Everybody was running. They're
right. Sometimes the audience be ready to be mean to everybody too. Yeah, I think being a stand-up comic and entertaining people that you never met is the hardest profession of all time.
Yeah, you're right. So it's in the laws of attraction. 50 horrible human beings can show up at the same place at the same time. They all like, ooh. And so I get on stage, they throw me up. The guy who was showcasing, because it was an industry showcase, he was like, he kept switching. He was like, I'm not gonna move you. I'm not gonna move you because you only been here a couple of days. I'm not gonna do that to you. Well, after he saw everybody taking them hits, he was like, I'm a bump you. And put me on stage, and I had a really good set. And Robert De Niro was like, him and Taylor Hackford, who directed Ray, Jamie Foxx, one of the best people to ever do it. And he goes, I want her. And so I went to Israel shortly after that, and they called me because I forgot all about it. And I was in Israel, and Taylor Hackford was like, hey, this is Taylor. I'm just calling because I saw you at the Cellar, and I want you to be in this movie with my friend Bobby. And I was like, hey, Taylor, my phone is roaming. I'm in Israel. I get back on Sunday. You think you can call me then?
Wow, Bobby.
Bobby, I did not know. Yo, and I got back, I was so embarrassed because I had told my agent. My agent was like, you know that was Taylor Hackford and Bobby is Robert De Niro. As soon as the plane landed and I turned my phone on, my phone rang and it was Taylor. He was like, hey, Ida, do you think you could talk to me now? And I was like, sure. I was like, I'll apologize to him. But when I went to the screening with Robert De Niro, he just laughed at me and was like, your phone was roaming. Like,
seriously?
Exactly.
Like for real? But there's more with you because you were a top 10 finalist in the 8th season of Last Comic Standing. Anybody that's seen that reality competitive show know it's brutal because not only because of the competition, but people are commenting on social media. So did you watch it when it aired? And so how did you handle the pressure of that show?
Yo, I never watched Last Comic Standing. To this day, I've never seen it. I only seen the clips that I posted. It was too painful to watch. My grandmother had just died of cancer, and my uncle had just been murdered, and he raised me. So it was like I lost my father and my grandmother, and it was too much for me. I didn't want to watch. It was really hard to be funny when you're in grief, and people don't understand that. But then I remember getting tweets from people. And this woman sent me this tweet and was like, every night I pray that you get eliminated. And I remember being at that point where I was like, oh, I got time today. So I went through all her stuff.
Where's my watch? I got time today.
I got it. I went through all her stuff and I remember tweeting her back. I said, I went through your whole stuff, your profile, your page. I said, you got a whole lot of stuff you should be praying about.
Your Abby, your comments, I'm pulling receipts on you now.
and I knew, I was like, I'm getting off this thing. I'm not participating in this. But I got it.
But I definitely must say congratulations.
Thank you.
Because like for everything you've overcome and for everything you've endured, and as I mentioned, like entertaining strangers, in my opinion, is the hardest thing someone could possibly do. So what is some of your advice for people that want to get into the stand-up comic game?
Ooh, it's not for the faint of heart. If you become a stand-up comedian because you think it's an easy route to get famous, false. And if you do it for that reason, you shouldn't be in the game. Comedy is an art and it is a science. It's one of the purest forms of art. We don't have a union. We are at the bottom of the food chain. We go around the country making people laugh during pandemics, fainting on stages. DL Hughley. And
what up, DL? Send me a hat, dog.
That's my folks. But it's like we do, it's not easy. It's not easy to do stand-up. And you should only do it if you really love it, and it's like anything else that you want to be great at. It's something you have to love because it's not easy. And I always tell comedians, go as you, because you're going to eventually show up anyway. So don't go on stage doing your best impression of what you think a comedian should be. Be yourself.
So I just had Neil Brennan on the show.
Nice.
Dave Chappelle did his show in Detroit. Fortunate enough, I was invited and I went both nights. You're a really talented actor and comic, and you do so many amazing things. How do you now walk the line of cancel culture?
You know, I'm with Cat Williams on this. Like, I don't know. Cancel culture to me does not exist. You know, there are some things you shouldn't be saying, and that some people you shouldn't be talking down on. You know, if you say something that's demeaning for a group of people, and it's not even to be funny, you know that you shouldn't be doing that. I've been canceled before. I've had to deal with people, you know, messing with me on Twitter because I didn't say something that they agreed with. I know my intentions, and I know that I'm never out there trying to do stuff that is intentional and hurtful. It's just not me. But I also am not going to tiptoe around a bunch of people who are not accustomed to dealing with realities that I had to face. Like, there was no cancel culture when I was growing up. And I just think that specifically when it comes to us as people of color, Black and brown people, we always tiptoeing around stuff. We always forgiving people who are not good to us.
Yes.
You know, and I'm tired of that. That's what my special is about. It's about fighting back. You know, like when I remember that young man killed them Black people in that church. And the first thing they asked them Black people was, do you forgive him? And I'm like, we have to. I'm a fighter. You know, I grew up fighting. I'm still here. I remember getting into my first fight and my uncle was like, did you die? Because they would be like, you go out, you go fight, or you gonna fight us.
No doubt.
And he was like, and you know, and I quite honestly, I don't think it's, you know, mature or wise to walk around fighting people, but there's a time when you gotta fight, and it doesn't necessarily mean violence. Sometimes it means you gotta fight for yourself. And so I find myself in this interesting space, this nuanced space with this new generation and this old generation, because some of that stuff I learned from my folks back in the day is why I'm still here.
Right, exactly. And it's the same thing in entertainment and being an athlete. Like there's certain artists, you go back and listen to some of the things they were able to say in the 80s and or the 90s that you know you just can't say right now. But that's why I applaud the next step that you took. You stood on it so much that you now named your comedy special Fighting Words. Your stand-up special, Aida Rodriguez, Fighting Words, is out right now on HBO Max. Congratulations. How does it feel to have an HBO special? And what's the biggest thing you hope viewers take away from watching the show?
You know, I'm gonna tell you, first of all, I'm very proud of it. I feel like I think I'm the only Latin woman who's ever had a special on HBO Max. And I don't know that HBO has had a Latin woman do a special. I don't know that ceiling's been broken for women of color. Tiffany Haddish, who's a very good friend of mine, one of the most successful people in comedy right now, I don't think has broken the comedy ceiling, you know? But I hope that one thing people walk away with is I went to see my father, and I hadn't seen my father since I was a kid. And I didn't want my father to be a stereotype. My father is a human being, imperfect, made mistakes, but I wanted to extend grace. I could have just been petty and been like, I'm over here in the United States living my best life. He's over there struggling. And I really think we've reached this point in society now where everything is so volatile and polarized. If you like green M&Ms, I don't like you because I like yellow M&Ms. And I'm gonna get you canceled because green M&Ms are made in India, and that's people in India are suffering. And it's all that. And I was like, where do we have grace and forgiveness and space for learning and growth? I guarantee you that if you ever do research on the people who got people canceled, you will find a good reason to cancel that person, because all of us are imperfect. So what I would like for people to walk away with is just space and say, I have room to grow. I have an opportunity to be better. And so does everybody else. And there are some people who are horrible human beings and they belong over there. But for the most part, I wanted people to know, those of us that have had hard lives are people too, and we're not gonna always get it right. Where I come from, they would laugh at us if we were cry.
Correct.
They'd be like, you crying?
Yes, and that's why I applaud Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles. Those young queens, their intellect and their strength at their age is extremely incredible, because as you mentioned, I was taught in a way like, find a way to make it happen. Stop crying, stop whining. And you've had to overcome so much turbulence. But I also want to ask you something. There's the trappings of fame, and then there's money. So like, how was it for you when you started to make money? Amongst your family, amongst your friends, did you make some dumb purchases? I talked about basic first generation Black and brown people in particular as athletes. We 100% spend our entire first contract because you're trying to buy everything for the first time. So do you have any stories about that?
What's funny is that first, and big ups to Tiffany Haddish, who made sure that I got paid like a white man in comedy when I did it. She did. That was her thing. She was like, make sure you get paid like a white man. And she fought for it. She took a pay cut so that I could get paid. But she has always been in my ear about saving my money. And so for me, I was married to a professional athlete, and we went broke because we made it and we went broke. And I was watching firsthand how many people think that $1 million is $1 billion.
Absolutely. You can live with this forever, ever, ever, 100 years. You got that $1 million in your pocket in perpetuity.
You can take care of all of us, right? So when I got that first check, I put that check in at Edward Jones. I went and invested
Good for you.
The whole check after I paid my taxes and I paid my commissions, and I put it away, and I lived off of my stand-up money, my monthly. And I was like, I'm not touching that money, and I'm never going to touch that money, because that money gotta be there for tomorrow. And every day I say tomorrow. But have I made some dumb purchases? I don't know if I bought a Rolex, because I know that watches don't depreciate. Like I wouldn't buy, I'm not gonna go buy a, whatever the car is of the day. If I buy a car, I'm gonna buy a classic that's probably gonna appreciate. Like that's just the way that I think, but I've always thought like that. But I mean, I got some, I got some shoes.
Yeah, we all splurge on something. You work hard.
I got into sneakers.
Yeah, enjoy fruits of your labor. Talk about your sneaker game. Tell us about your shoes. This show's about entertainment. This show's about fashion. So what are you rocking? What you rocking in your special? What you wearing?
Oh, so in the special, that was very special. This designer named Celestino, who actually hit me on Instagram and was like, I saw you on the Young Turks. I want to make something for you. How can I show up for you? He made my outfit, the white outfit that I'm wearing, is the cutouts are from my great grandfather's tribe from Puerto Rico, from the Arawak Taino Indians. And that was so special to me. But I did have on some Tom Ford shoes that Angela Yee bought me from the Breakfast Club.
Love, that's my sister. She's also been on the show.
Yeah, that's who called me this morning to make sure I was cool, because she knows I have imposter syndrome. And she was like, I sent her an article, my New York Times article, and it had a crying emoji. And she called me. She was like, who I gotta cuss out? And I was like, you don't cuss nobody out. You just sweep people to death. But she bought me these Tom Ford shoes that she saw my outfit. She went by herself.
That's love.
Bought me the shoes. And they are some of the most beautiful shoes I've ever owned. They're so dope.
Shout out to Angela Yee and the Breakfast Club. Charlamagne has been on the show too. I got to get my guy Envy. on the program as well. But before I let you get out of here, and by the way, I'm going to make sure I write a column about this podcast, give it a theme, and make sure I pay homage to all of the things you have accomplished and you will continue to accomplish. But before I let you go, I have a rapid fire segment called Gone in 60 Seconds. You ready to do this?
I am.
All right. Who, in your opinion, is the greatest comedian of all time?
Richard Pryor.
Name your favorite Dominican dish.
Oh, my favorite Dominican dish is mango.
Name a famous person who is not a comedian, who is funny enough to have a stand-up special.
Muhammad Ali.
Love him. Great answer. That's my favorite. What's the one piece of advice you give to aspiring comedians?
Be yourself.
And last but certainly not least, other than Richard Pryor, what's your favorite stand-up?
Comedian?
Yes. What's your favorite stand-up show? The person that you saw do a stand-up and you was like, yo, besides myself, that's a classic. For me, it was Raw. It was The Closer. It was Richard Pryor. Like Chris Rock had a great historic stand-up. Your favorite stand-up?
I would say it was, what's the name of it? Don't Shoot the Messenger, Chris Rock. When I saw him do that, I was like, that's a classic. I think out of Dave Chappelle's last specials, I Love Equanimity. I thought that was like such a whole special from beginning to end. It was very solid and he's brilliant. I worked with him. I went to Austin with him and he put me on stage. I would say George Carlin. I forgot the name of the special, but it was a special that I was like, whoa, that right there is phenomenal. Sam J is one of the comedians that I love and respect. And I think she's pretty brilliant. And Freddie Prinze was somebody that I was too young, but when I got older, I started researching Freddie Prinze and I was like, oh, he was a comedian that was Puerto Rican, not a Puerto Rican comedian.
So audience, you got some homework to do. She just gave y'all some game on some classic stand-ups. And before I let you get out of here, make sure you guys check out Aida Rodriguez, Fighting Words. It's out right now on HBO Max. Congratulations. I appreciate you joining the Renaissance Man.
Thank you for having me.